again, everybody. This is Harry Caray, celebrating the first championship season I've witnessed within these walls of Ivy. Cub fans everywhere are whooping it up. But they're not just celebrating this season's success, they're celebrating the most fascinating team in baseball, everybody's team. And there's one man who should tell you the story of the Cubs, a veteran of nearly 50 years on the Wrigley Field scene. He's invading my territory right now, out there in the bleachers. Meet Jack Brickhouse.
Yes, the Cubs are everybody's team, and they have been ever since the National League was founded back in 1876. As a matter of fact, the Cubs are the only club playing baseball continuously in the same city since the birth of organized baseball. Other teams have switched cities or they've been suspended, but the Cubs have been going since big-time baseball began over 100 years ago. As a matter of fact, the Cubs played their first game in 1876. They played it in April of 1876, 60 days before Custer's last stand. It all began with Albert G. Spalding. Spalding started in Rockford, Illinois, and became a star underhanded pitcher at Boston. He was an early Hall of Famer. Spalding came to the Chicago White Stockings with another Midwesterner and Hall of Famer, Cap Anson. Spalding quit marathon pitching after 1876 to spend a season at first base. No one else has had as much influence on the game. As team president, Spalding found his future Cubs entertained at the White House by President Cleveland. From Cleveland's time, presidents have been Cub fans. William Howard Taft, the first president to throw at a baseball on opening day. Spalding anticipated the World Series. In 1886, Spalding saw his White Stockings lose 4-2 to the St. Louis Browns, rivals from another league. He was the first to escort a team on an international tour. Almost a century ago, Spalding took a baseball unit, mainly the Cubs, to Australia, Italy, England, and en route they stopped in Egypt to climb the Sphinx. Spalding was the first to sell a player. He sent King Kelly of Slide Kelly Slide fame, to Boston for $10,000. Charlie Finley did not invent colored uniforms. Spalding did. The color of the cap and shirt identified the player's position. The color of the socks identified the team. So in those days, everybody's team was the White Stockings. Yes, the Cubs have been colorful since way back when. And they've been the Cubs since this newspaper article of 1902. History doesn't identify the newspaper man who named them, but we all have heard of the first great stars who played in the first Cub era. That began when Frank Chance became manager in mid-1905. After the arrival of Johnny Evers, who would team with Chance and Joe Tinker to form the great double play combination. Yes, Tinker to Evers to Chance. And the lesser-known cog in that infield, third baseman Harry Steinfeld. This tribute to Tinker and Evers was a love ballad, though for years Tinker and Evers didn't even speak to each other. The 1906 Cubs won 116 games under Frank Chance, the peerless leader. And old Cap Anson presented Chance with a gold bat when the Cubs won the pennant. But Chance, meeting here with White Sox manager Fielder Jones, did not know his heavily favored Cubs were in for trouble in that 1906 World Series. The White Sox hitless wonders beat the Chicago Cubs in their only all-city series, 4-2. But the Cubs were back in the World Series in 1907 against the Detroit Tigers and their famous immortal Ty Cobb. The Cubs beat Detroit for their first official World Championship. The Cubs were back against the Tigers in 1908, but they had to work to earn that assignment. John Evers and giant Fred Merkle were the key figures in one of baseball's most memorable incidents. The hero was, well, you might say it was second base. The incident is remembered as Merkle's boner. The Cubs and Giants were in a tight pennant race and playing a crucial game in New York. With a runner in scoring position and Merkle on first, a Giant drove in what appeared to be the winning run. Merkle saw his teammate cross the plate, so Merkle, before he got to second base, cut across the infield and trotted for the clubhouse. Evers noticed that Merkle did not tag second base. Evers called for the baseball, any baseball, and he got one. And he tagged second base for the automatic out. And umpire Hank O'Day ruled that the giant run did not count. The score was still tied, and pandemonium broke out. National League directors said that the game would be replayed if the season ended in a tie. The Cubs and Giants did wind up in a tie. The Cubs won the playoff and went on to the World Series. A Chicago sports writer who called himself Bill Bailey predicted that the Cubs would beat Detroit in 5. And who was Bill Bailey in real life? He was Bill Veeck Sr. The Cubs did beat the Tigers in 5 and won their second consecutive world championship.
Yes, Jack Brickhouse, those 1907 and 1908 world titles were the first high spots of modern Cub history. But the Tinker Evers Chance era was drawing to a close when Mordecai Brown won the only Cub decision in the 1910 World Series. Chance and Tinker left after 1912. Evers was gone after 1913. Tinker resurfaced in a strange role in 1914 as manager of the Chicago Whales in a new venture, the Federal League. The new Federal League folded and the Cubs moved to the Whales ballpark, today's Wrigley Field, in 1916. And for the first Cub highlight within these walls of ivy,
a few days after war was declared in 1917, Fred Toney, the Cub pitcher, who had gone to Cincinnati, linked up with the Cubs' Hippo Vaughn in baseball's rarest mound duel, the famous double no-hit game. Unbelievable, unmatched.
Yes, Hippo Vaughn and Fred Toney. That was a thriller. Neither pitcher yielded a hit through 9 innings. Cincinnati's Larry Kopf singled in the 10th inning, but with 2 away, Big Hippo still had a shutout, and then he faced Prince Hal Chase. Chase was safe on an error, Kopf going to third. Jim Thorpe came to bat. Now, Vaughn fielded Thorpe's grounder all right, and he threw to the plate. But the catcher, Wilson, expected to put out at first, I guess, because he was napping when Vaughn's throw arrived home, and that permitted Cincinnati to score. So the Cubs trailed 1-0, and they lost the double no-hitter when Fred Toney set him down in the 10th inning, 1-2-3. Babe Ruth started as a Boston pitcher. Babe beat Cub pitcher Hippo Vaughn in the 1918 World Series opener to spark Boston's drive to the World Championship. What never can be erased from the record books is that Babe Ruth was a nemesis to the Chicago Cubs, as we will see. The outcome of that 1918 series might have been happier if the Cubs had been able to use pitcher Grover Cleveland Alexander. Pete Alexander was such a delightful and interesting and colorful character that Hollywood filmed his life story. The part of Pete Alexander was played by, oh, I'm sure you know, huh? You certainly recognize Hollywood's Grover Cleveland Alexander, don't you? The arrival of Alexander was the start of a new Cub era, a memorable period. William Wrigley Jr. took over as owner. Wrigley brought in old sports writer Bill Bailey, who really was Bill Veeck Sr. Hall of Famer Gabby Hartnett arrived. So did Charlie Grimm, to be associated with the Cubs for the better part of a half-century and to serve 3 terms as manager. Big money was spent for Rogers Hornsby, hitter of hitters. To get the team back on the pennant track, the Cubs signed a manager who never had played or managed in the Big Tent. He was Joe McCarthy. By 1929, McCarthy made the Cubs champions again. Those 1929 Cubs fielded 4 players who hit .345 or better. Hack Wilson, Kai Kyler, Rig Stevenson, and Hornsby, a .380 hitter. The series opened on the north side, first World Series ever played in Wrigley Field. The first ball was thrown out by owner Wrigley himself. William Wrigley, unfortunately, was destined to see his Cubs lose that series to Connie Mack's Super Athletics, 4-1. Howard Emke was the surprise pitching starter for Mack's team and fanned 13 Cubs. In the 4th game, the Cubs had an 8-0 lead and seemed destined to tie up that series at 2 games each. But the roof collapsed in the 7th inning when Philadelphia scored 10 runs. The goat of that inning and of course the series as a result, was Cub Hack Wilson. Hack had the bad luck to drop a fly ball in the sun. Lovable, misunderstood Hack Wilson, who very belatedly won a Hall of Fame niche.
Hack Wilson not only holds the record for runs batted in and the National League record for home runs, also holds the record for most saloons in and out of. And he was also the most colorful ball player, I think, ever to perform in Wrigley Field and maybe ever to perform in baseball. He was a fellow who established his own set of rules, one of which is stay out as late as you can. I can remember one Sunday when I was a youngster working in the ballpark, and Hack arrived, I should say about 10 o'clock, 10:30, before a doubleheader. I went up in the clubhouse to get something from Andy Latshaw, and there's Hack in one of these great old big bathtubs. And with him, in the tub with him, are 200 pounds of ice. And every time he would stick his head up for breath, Latshaw would push him back down again. He sobered him up so he walked out that afternoon in a doubleheader, hit 3 home runs, 3 doubles, and 2, as I recall, singles. Remarkable guy.
President Herbert Hoover, who also had a disastrous 1929, saw Philadelphia win that series. And what about Hack Wilson, that 1929 GOAT? Well, less than 12 months later, Wilson was the toast of all baseball. Yes, in 1930, Hack Wilson hit 56 home runs, a National League record. Wilson also batted in 190 runs, a Major League record that some experts said could last forever. Joe McCarthy resigned as the manager before the season ended. He was replaced by Rogers Hornsby. Now, Hornsby was some ball player. He was also some character, and he was a tough taskmaster. But Hornsby wasn't above letting everyone have some fun in spring training. Spring training time is fun for fans and players alike. The Cubs played and frolicked on Catalina Island, where movie actresses like Joan Crawford would dance with such Cub stars as Stan Hack. Spring training fun also continued when the Cubs moved to Arizona. Sure, spring training was fun. And going back, the Cubs reported to Catalina in 1932. Charlie Grimm had no idea that he would soon replace Hornsby and take the Cubs to the World Series. The 1932 World Series foes were the Yankees, led by Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. Yes, Babe Ruth, the one-time Boston lefty. Babe Ruth was a dandy, on the field and off. And how he could hit those home runs. The Babe had style, smashing those homers and running the bases. When the 1932 series moved from New York to Wrigley Field with the Cubs trailing 2-0, Babe Ruth was to write a chapter in Cub history. In the 5th inning, pitcher Charlie Root slipped 2 strikes past Babe Ruth. What came next was one of the most controversial and famous home runs in baseball history. Babe Ruth smashed a mighty home run over the center field fence that went into orbit. Today, they still argue about that home run. Almost everybody saw it differently, including the reporters. For example, writers Paul Gallico and Westbrook Pegler told their readers that Ruth had paused after 2 strikes and signaled that he would hit the next pitch for a home run. A famous painting added to the legend that Babe pointed to signal the home run. Today, fans still argue about it.
Well, I was there. I was working. He wasn't pointing to left field. He was pointing to Latshaw, and he was telling him he was going to hit a home run. But bear in mind that Babe Ruth was one of the great pull hitters of all time. If he's going to hit a home run, or if he thinks he's going to point to right field where he normally would hit home runs. But instead, he points into the left field's dugout.
Well, many believe that imaginative writers may have conceived that idea because of a pregame incident. Franklin Roosevelt, who was then governor of New York, later, of course, to become president, was in Wrigley Field that afternoon, and he was visited by Yankee manager Joe McCarthy. Roosevelt arose and pointed toward Wrigley Field's flagpole. Perhaps that gave Ruth the idea. Perhaps it gave sports writers a license for some make-believe. There were new Cub stars making their names. Billy Herman, Stan Hack, Billy Jurgis, Frank Demery, pitcher Bill Lee, Lane Tech schoolboy Phil Cavaretta, as Grimm guided his Cubs back to the World Series in 1935. Remember that ace Cub battery of Warneke and Hartnett? The Cubs sewed up the pennant with the 21-game winning streak as the season wound down. I remember that after the Cubs had run that streak to about 18, a reporter assigned from the news desk, not the sports department, was asked to do a color story on the Cubs. So he found Charlie Grimm and he said, "Well, hello, Skipper, how are the Cubs going?" And Grimm replied, "Well, nothing sensational. We're just winning games one at a time." Warneke shut out the Detroit Tigers in the opener. Ron also won game number 5. Hartnett and Herman also hit Cub homers in the series. But after Detroit won, it was back to the drawing boards. Philip K. Wrigley, who had succeeded his father as Cub owner, was persuaded to spend heavily to obtain pitcher Dizzy Dean from the Cardinals after the 1937 season. Phil Wrigley, one of the finest men I've ever known in baseball, was warned that Dizzy Dean was a bad investment, that Dean had a sore arm, in fact. Well, Wrigley was not investing in Dean's arm as much as he was in Dean's heart. Dean was used sparingly, and he pitched just as well as you could ask him to. He won 7 games and lost only 1 during that 1938 campaign that saw Hartnett, by the way, installed as manager in mid-season. The 1938 series opened in Wrigley Field. Chicago Mayor Ed Kelly conferred with New York Mayor LaGuardia before the opener. The Cubs lost the opener, so for game number 2, the Cub future was entrusted to Dizzy Dean, the pitcher with the big heart. Dizzy Dean, not long with the Cubs, but a Cub immortal because of his performance in one 1938 series game. For 7 innings, Dean was in charge, protecting a 3-2 lead going into the 8th. A home run by Frank Crosetti was the blow that started the assault on Dean. Joe DiMaggio added a home run, and Dean, though replaced by Larry French, was the loser, 6-3. The Yankees swept the series, but Cub Dizzy Dean had shown them what professionalism was.
Bear in mind that Dean's arm was gone, and he pitched one of the more remarkable games in the World Series history. He couldn't throw hard enough to break a light bulb, and he finessed them. You see, the opposition still believed that he could throw, and so he would go into that great windup, and then nothing would happen, and the ball would eventually arrive at the plate. He was a tough competitor. with nothing. He was brave to get out there. I thought he might get killed.
Now, if you think that 21-game winning streak that ensured the 1935 pennant was something, look at that 1938 windup. Pittsburgh seemed a cinch to win the flag. Then the Cubs got hot. Came up to a crucial series with Pittsburgh at Wrigley Field. Darkness was settling in the ninth inning. With the score tied, the Cubs at bat, 2 out, and Gabby Hartnett at the plate trying to follow Mace Brown's pitches in that fading light.
Well, the umpire would never do this today, but he had notified the press box that with this last out, the game was over. It would be continued. It was tied, as I remember. And Gabby Hartnett took a couple of swings, as I remember, and went down to one knee. And the third swing, he hit the ball, and I saw it disappear into the darkness. And I thought of the word, it's the Gloman, and that's why I wrote the lead. Gabby hit a homer in the Gloman today.
Early in the 1944 season, Grimm was called back for his next stint as manager. And on opening day of 1945, had the Cubs headed for a pennant. Hank Borowy arrived in the season of 1945. Borowy was smuggled out of the American League from the Yankees by Cub general manager Jim Gallagher and his savvy. Borowy pitched the Cubs to the pennant. Boy, what a purchase he was. And in one season, Hank became a Cub immortal.
The Chicago Cubs took the lead on July the 11th and grabbed their flag in a game with the Pirates a day before the season ended. A crowd of well over 54,000 is on hand to see this colorful opening game of the 1945 Baseball Classic. Briggs Stadium, like Wrigley Field in Chicago, is one of the finest ballparks in the country. The two starting pitchers in this important first game, Hank Borowy for the Cubs and Hal Newhouser for the Tigers. While the pitchers are getting ready, let's have a look at the lineups for today's game. For the Cubs, Stanley Hack, third base. Don Johnson, second base. Peanuts Lowry, left field. Phil Cavaretta, first base. Andy Pafko, center field. Bill Nicholson, right field. Mickey Livingston, catcher. Roy Hughes, shortstop. And Hank Borowy pitching. Cavaretta beat out a slow roller to Mayo at second. Johnson going to third on the play. Then on a pass ball, Johnson scores and Cavaretta takes second. The Cubs start the fireworks with 1 run home. Pafko was purposely passed, and Nicholson steps up to the plate. He swings and lifts a long fly to right center, 370 feet from home. Roy Cullenbine backs up near the wall, but the ball gets away from him, and Nicholson comes into third with a triple to his credit. Both Cavaretta and Pafko score, giving the Cubs a 3-0 lead. Cavaretta hit one into center field for a base hit, scoring Johnson with run number 5. Andy Pafko followed with a line drive double to left center, scoring Cavaretta. After Nicholson popped to Mayo for the second out, Livingston singled to center, scoring Pafko. That put the Cubs in the lead 7-0, and that was all for Newhouser. For the Cubs, it's Claude Passow, a 17-game winner this season.
Yorks was the only Detroit hit of the game. Claude Passow finished with a 1-hitter. Up to that, as spectacular a pitching performance as ever has been seen in the World Series.
Now with the game underway, York lined a single to left in the Tigers' second, but was left stranded on first. It was fairly close game until the 4th inning, when Lowry opened with a double against the left field wall, and the Cubs were on their way again. Cavaretta advanced him to third with a neat sacrifice, and when Pafko walked, Overmeyer and the Tigers were in real trouble. Stubb went to work in earnest, but Big Bill Nicholson poked one over short. And Lowry scored, Pafko stopping at second. After Livingston flied out to Kramer, Hughes followed with a base hit to right, scoring Pafko, and the Cubs lead the Tigers 2-0. With Benton pitching, the Cubs came to life again in their half of the 7th. And now we take you to Wrigley Field, the home of the Chicago Cubs. Let's go inside and look around. The large double-deck seating arrangement affords a fine view of action all over the field here in Chicago. For the fifth game at Wrigley Field, it was Borowy starting for the Cubs and Hal Newhouser for the Tigers. For the sixth game at Wrigley Field, Virgil Trucks and Claude Passaw are back, gunning for their second victory in the series. With the Tigers ahead 1-0, Pafko singled through the box in the Cubs' half of the second. Livingston forced Pafko at second. And when Webb threw wild to first, Livingston tried to take second but was tagged out. Richards to Webb. Don't get angry, boys. Hughes beat out a bunt when York slipped in fielding the ball. Passaw then hit a bounder to Trucks, and all runners were safe when the throw to third pulled Outlaw off the bag. Hack came through again with a single to center, scoring Livingston and Hughes. And when Richards missed Kramer's throw to the plate, Passaw went to third base and Hack to second. And here's Hank Greenberg on the spot again. Prim looks him over carefully with the count 3-2. Greenberg connects with a long drive that clears the left field railing into the crowd for a home run, tying the score 7-7. Stan Hack looks over and selects one of his favorite Louisville Slugger models. Hack then lines a double into left field. Greenberg comes running in to cut down the hit. The ball takes a bad hop over his left shoulder, which enabled Schuster to score all the way from first base with the winning run of the ball game. In 12 innings, the Cubs are victors over the Tigers, 8-7.
Greenberg originally was charged with an error on that hot smash by Hack, but hours later, near midnight, the scorers got together, reversed themselves, removed the error, and credited game winner Hack with a 3-base hit.
Well, here we are at the 7th and deciding game, the crucial one in this first World Series after victory. Even the band here at Wrigley Field has caught the spirit of this game. Just look at those drum majorettes. Now over here we see Borowy, anchorman of the Cubs, warming up. He'd like to make it 3 pitching victories over the Tigers, and the clinching game at that. The Tigers were not to be denied, as Webb opened the game with a base hit. His teammate, Mayo, followed with a safe hit to right, sending Webb to third. Kramer looped a safe one into left field, scoring the first Tiger run. And here comes Charlie Grimm to remove Borowy from the ball game and replace him with Derringer, with 1 run home and Tigers on first and second.
In my opinion, Wrigley Field is the best ballpark in baseball. Maybe it's the only true ballpark left in baseball. People go to athletic events, baseball games, for instance, as a form of escape. They go to find a couple of 3 hours in which they can get away from the troubles that beset them. So the idea of a ballpark is to make it as different from the city streets as it's possible, to create for them this never land in which they'll be comfortable, in which they'll get away. And that's what Wrigley Field is meant to do. And you see, to start with, when you go to the ballpark on the north side, you are immediately a member of the team. You're not just a spectator. You're so close that you're a participant. And that's something that's been lost in these new ballparks. They are built after the Colosseum in Rome with the gladiators, because you don't let the people get near the gladiators. They might knock you off. But the idea, too, was to create, if you could, a feeling of outdoors, which is the way ball games should be played, at daytime, in the sunshine. And so he planted the vines around the outfield, put some trees up on those boxes that no longer have trees because the wind blew all the leaves off. I think I put them back 5 times and finally gave up, tried artificial trees, and no, that was even worse. You see, that's why artificial turf is such an abortion, because it's just the asphalt of the city streets. You want to go in a ballpark, it should smell like freshly cut grass. It should feel like you're away from somewhere. And Wrigley Field does that better than any ballpark in the country. And if I sound prejudiced, I am. I built most of it. The best scoreboard possible for daytime baseball. It is remarkable when you stop to think about it that something that was built almost 50 years ago and has been outdoors and unsheltered still works. I defy any current manufacturer to make the same claim. Contrary to what everyone would have you believe, there was advertising. There were two spearmen on top of the scoreboard, one of them a batter and one of them a pitcher. I used to think that it would be good to have lights in Wrigley Field. It wouldn't, because it probably in the long run would cost them at least attendance a lot. Because now people feel safe to go to Wrigley Field during the day. Phil Wrigley really made the wisest decision, baseball decision, he probably ever made, and that was no lights in Wrigley Field.
Down through the years, of course, I've visited every ballpark in every city in baseball, and I've seen some very interesting things take place, such as changes in the stadia. Ebbets Field, no longer around. The Polo Grounds, gone. Places like Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati has replaced Crosley Field. Old Forbes Field in Pittsburgh is gone, and now we have Three Rivers Stadium. Sportsman's Park in St. Louis has been replaced by beautiful Busch Stadium in downtown St. Louis. But you know, with all of these new places, including Vet Stadium in Philadelphia, as opposed to old Connie Mack Stadium, with all of these places, Wrigley Field remains one of the most unique, interesting, comfortable, colorful, friendly, intimate stadia in the world. As Phil Wrigley once told me, I said, you know, Phil, I said, I appreciate these new ballparks. I said, I really do appreciate these new stadia, but with all the new concrete and all the new ironwork and steel that's in them, there's a certain sterility about them compared to Wrigley Field, where the intimacy between the fans and the players is very apparent. And Phil made a pretty good line. He said, yes, Jack, he said, those other places have a stadium. We have a ballpark. The 1950 season was memorable to me because it was the first full season of Cub slugger Hank Sauer, who became the mayor of Wrigley Field. Hank Sauer, remember how those fans would toss those packets of chewing tobacco to old Hank out there in left field, and he had them stashed in the vines out there and left all over the place? I guess he always will be the mayor of Wrigley Field, yet his tenure as the home run king was brief because in 1953 late, Jimmy Gallagher was able to land and introduce to Wrigley Field Bingo Ernie Banks. Ernie Banks, first to be named the National League's most valuable player 2 years in a row, and with second division teams at that.
This is one thing that I enjoy about the Cubs, a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. Everybody seems to be enjoying themselves. There's no dead time involved in our training program. We're always keeping busy, and there's a little kidding going along as we work out, which makes it a lot of fun, and yet we're really working hard. To look at this wax figure, it's really amazing, and it's a funny feeling because you can see yourself, and it's like viewing yourself after you're gone. But it's a great honor, and I'm very happy and very thankful.
I was there, of course, when Banks got that 500th home run. What a moment that was. When Ernie went into the Hall of Fame, that was a moment for all of us. When Lou Boudreau of our group went into the Hall of Fame, that was a great moment for all of us. Sam Jones was the Cub pitcher and walked the first three men he faced in the ninth inning. But manager Stan Hack left him in there, and Jones saved the no-hitter by striking out the next three batters. And while Toothpick Sam Jones was pitching that no-hitter, Hippo Vaughn, remember him? The Cub pitcher in that famous double no-hitter of 1917, was working in a West Side factory in Chicago and listening to Jones's performance on radio.
What about the 12 or 13 assistant co-coaches that the Cubs have had? Will you keep those guys, or do you even know them? I don't know. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I know nothing about it. I was hired to manage this ball club, and that's exactly what I'm doing. There will be one man managing the Chicago Cubs, and that is me.
Besides naming your new coaches, what's your next objective now?
Well, the next objective that I could see is that... Well, no, we're coming to that. I haven't sat down to talk to Mr. Holland about that yet, but we'll get around to that. I'm sure people will contact us.
You've seen the ball club from the broadcasting booth. What do you think it needs?
Well, as I said earlier, I think they could use a real good catcher. They might need a left fielder and a center fielder, and all clubs could use pitching.
You got anybody in mind?
Oh, yeah. Got some things in mind.
You trade anybody on the ball club?
No. No.
Who's untouchable?
Santo, Williams, Banks are untouchable as far as I'm concerned.
And Leo, in typical DeRocher style, said the Cubs were not an 8th place team, and Leo was right. That year, the league expanded to 10 teams, and the Cubs finished 10th. As a matter of fact, they became the first team in history to finish behind the New York Mets.
The Cubs finished last in 1966, but now, under their new manager, Leo DeRocher, they're very much on the rise. The Cubs are in first place for a brief time. They reached the top in this game against Cincinnati before a sellout throng at Wrigley Field.
I think Ken Holtzman, like several players on other clubs, would probably like to be with other ball clubs. And that has no grievance as far as I'm concerned where Ken Holtzman and I have had any trouble. I mean, I think Ken Holtzman can pitch here. He can pitch anywhere.
That's well hit. And there, I believe, goes the no-hitter.
Caught by Williams. Woo, boy. Ball 3, strike 2. Here it goes. Ground ball. Tuckered up with it. The throw to Bank. It's a no-hitter. It's a no-hitter for Kenny Holtzman. Look at this. Oh, brother. Woo, boy.
The Cubs, of course, have had many unforgettable moments, and one of them, although we'd kind of like to forget the finish, was that famous bleacher bum 1969 season.
Yes, since this wonderful sunshine that we get at the friendly confines of beautiful Wrigley Field or here with the Cubs in Scottsdale, Arizona, we're going to shine in '69.
Well, all we need is a few breaks. We've got the material now, Wendell. We've got a good ball club. We've got another year of experience under our belt. I've said this to writers that we're that much stronger actually at the beginning of the season because we didn't have Jim Hickman, we didn't have Willie Smith, we didn't have Regan, Abernathy, Gary, and this is very important in April.
During most of the season, the Chicago Cubs enjoy a comfortable lead in the National League East. Cub fans can smell a pennant. All of Chicago catches Cubs fever. From the Cubs bullpen, Dick Selma leads the colorful, zany bleacher bums in a thundering chant. Jim Hickman responds. Ron Santo contributes to the hysteria. Glenn Beckert rocks Wrigley Field with his glove.
Look at Beckert make this play. Beautiful. Glenn Beckert really robbed the loop.
Mets pitching gets sensational. Tom Seaver becomes the first Mets pitcher ever to win 20 games. The Mets are now breathing down the necks of the Cubs. The crucial confrontation takes place in early September at Shea Stadium. The Cubs versus the amazing Mets in a 2-game series. That black cat doesn't seem to amuse Leo DeRocher's Cubs very much. The first game's a spine-tingler. Wayne Garrett finally breaks a 2-2 tie with a single, scoring Tommy Agee with a winning run in a close play at home. Cubs catcher Randy Hundley is slightly miffed. In the second game, Tom Seaver outpitches Ferguson Jenkins. The amazing Mets sweep the Cubs and are just 1/2 game behind. Then on September 10th, a miracle. Ken Boswell singles in Cleon Jones to beat the Expos 3-2. And the New York Mets take over first place for the first time in their 8-year history.
Billy Williams, the Cubs Iron Man of the Bleacher Bum Cubs, may have been as underrated a superstar as baseball ever saw.
Billy, I'm not about to jinx you, but you're thinking about this 400 figure for the year? That's a hard figure to hit, Paul, and I don't think no one will wind up with 400 now. I think the best season you could have would be around about 350 because there's too much baseball now, I think. And the traveling is not too good. I mean, it's good in a way, but we get into town one night about 1 o'clock and wake up that morning and got to play a day game. So I don't think, I think the best season a fella could have now is around 350.
Billy Williams of the Cubs is also given a day, commemorating his 896th consecutive game. Billy shows his appreciation by banging out 5 hits in a doubleheader victory over the St. Louis Cardinals.
Billy Williams, the reigning Cubs superstar. This spring, he's working at first base.
By moving to first base, I feel that this will help me to add more offense to the ball club.
Fergie Jenkins ranks with Cub pitching greats from Clark Griffith to Lon Warneke to the stars of today. Fergie had 6 consecutive Cub seasons winning 20 or more games.
I try and finish whatever I start. This is the one theory that I've had. If I go out there, stay out there until you finish it.
You know, I hit the ball pretty good and I run, you know, okay. And I'm working on my defense pretty hard every day. I take from 100 to 200 ground balls every day. I mean, because I'm going to make my errors, you know, and the guy's going to make errors. But I guess he's going to be thinking a little different when I make an error than, you know, when Keshner or somebody else make an error, you know, because, you know, I'm taking Ron Sando's place.
That's a fly ball. That's very deep for left center. Back goes Marino. Back. Hey! It's all over! Larry Bednar just hit an opposite-field home run, and the Cubs have won this game!
A 4-run lead looks like a glacier when relief ace Bruce Sutter is pitching. He ices the game and gets his first All-Star victory.
Going. Hey, kiss it goodbye! A home run! It's into the basket for a home run. A youngster made a fine catch, but it's gone. A home run. And Kingman now has put the Cubs out in front 3-0. That's his first Wrigley Field home run as a Cub.
That's it. Way back there. Stay there, baby. Back.
That's well hit. Way back. Say goodbye. Back. Hey, another home run for Kingman. Hey, kissing goodbye. It is gone. Oh, I thought he hit the other one hard. That one's in Milwaukee. It hit the front porch of the 3rd house across Waveland Avenue. Man, oh man. Isn't that something? That is unreal. Kingman's 3rd home run of the ball game.
No matter how well or how badly they performed, it didn't matter because Cub fans were tremendously loyal. Cub fans enjoyed even if you won 5 in a row, it was a whole season. The fact that you would end up with the greatest number of defeats didn't matter because you had 1 week of ecstasy. I'll tell you something. I think that if you really wanted to search and find the most loyal of all people. You wouldn't have to give a lot of tests. You wouldn't have to get the government to investigate people with the FBI. You could just ask them, were you ever a Cub fan?
I think an attitude and approach to work had to be changed, and I knew when I took this job that it could be done, it could be turned around.
I want to win games, and I'm going to try everything I can to get Dallas Green to get the best players, and I'm going to try everything I can to make the players play better. And there is absolutely no other motivation I have for coming to Chicago. None. Absolutely none. I don't want to say we're going to win 81 games. We might win more.
Manager Jim Frey was right. The Cubs won enough games in 1984 to make the playoffs for the first time. And they won because they rebuilt their ball club brilliantly. Shortly before opening day, they made a deal that gave them 2/3 of their outfield. They got Gary Matthews for left field and Bobby Dernier to play center field. That deal alone was a major change, helping both their offense and their defense. But how about the trading just prior to the June 15th deadline? The Cubs came up with Dennis Eckersley, an outstanding pitcher. They got starter Rick Sutcliffe, an award-winning candidate if there ever was one, plus bonus pitching help in George Frazier, who can relieve as well as spot start. All these newcomers inspired such improving holdovers as Jody Davis and Ryne Sandberg, a most valuable player in the eyes of any Cub fan. And with talented newcomers and blossoming younger Cubs, how could they miss? Particularly with veteran campaigners, old pros like Ron Cey and Larry Bowa anchoring their lineup. So you had a transformed team that found its chance because its general manager, Dallas Green, had the genius and the daring to rebuild even after season plans had been made. Holy cow, general manager Dallas Green certainly did put together one heck of a ball club. As everybody saw on this spectacular Monday night, September the 24th, 1984 in Pittsburgh, the night the dream came true, the night the Cubs won their division by beating the Pittsburgh Pirates 4-1 behind Rick Sutcliffe's two-hit pitching.
It's over. The Chicago Cubs will be the new Eastern Division champ. They're getting security men on the field. These Cub fans are going to explode. Jimmy Frey on his feet. First up, then down. First up, then down. Who's excited? George Solak, who has both hits. A dribbling trip on the right that just rolled around in the corner against the wall, and a safe bunt. That's how close Sutcliffe has been to perfection. This guy's the only base runner. He was on twice. Was picked off once. He will have faced only 28 men. 27 would be perfection. He started the swing, he held up. Hey, on the appeal, he went around, they say.
listen to this crowd. Might as well join them. Cubs are the champion! The Cubs are the champion! The Cubs win! Look at that mob scene! Orsulak out on strike! Rick Sutcliffe is 14th in a row! 16-1 for the year! The fans are getting out on the field! You'd think there were 50,000 here! Expressions, there's what made them a team. Genuine affection for each other. There's Popeye, Donza, there's Steve Trout. They have pitched the most important game of all. I guess no game would be more important than this. Was I happy that electric night? Well, there's probably only one happier man. A Cubs Hall of Famer who has waited 39 years for such a magic moment. Yes, my good friend, broadcaster Jack Brickhouse.
You know, for just a few years shy of half a century, the Cubs have been my team. Come to think of it, the history of the Cubs is the history of baseball. And now that they're everybody's team, which they certainly are, what a genuine pleasure it is for me to be a part of that scene. So, here's to baseball. Here's to the Cubs. Hey, hey!